Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to another episode of Sean's Movie Crusades. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and today we've got a special end-of-year episode as we are going over the top 10 most disappointing films of 2019. Now, when it comes to disappointing films, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are bad movies or that they are movies that I did not like, but more or less they are movies that just didn't quite live up to the expectations that I had, or there were movies that were I was really anticipating and really excited for, and they just never fully reached what I was looking for from the films, or they're a movie that just had so much potential and just ultimately failed. So just because these are on the list doesn't necessarily mean that I did not like the movies. There are some movies on here that got high scores from me. And were in my top 10 at some point throughout the year, but ultimately by year's end, you go back and you look at these films, you're like, you know what, they just did not do as good as I expected them to do, or they just weren't as good as I was hoping they could have been, or frankly, wow, they really swung and missed when it came to this movie. So that's what this list really consists of. Like I said, not necessarily bad films. I actually don't think any of these films are in my worst movies of 2019, which is a video I shot earlier. So all these movies are not the worst films of the year by any means. They're just films that just did not quite do exactly what they probably should have done throughout the year. There's going to be some movies on here to be like, well, how could you have this movie and not, this movie? And it's just because these movies, frankly, are the ones that stood out most to me that just missed the mark. So let's go ahead and jump on into the list and see exactly where my most disappointing films of 2019 really ended up. Coming in at number 10, this movie, honestly, I never heard of this movie up until the trailer came out. This isn't a movie where it's like I heard about it and I was like, oh, that'll be great when it comes out. This is a movie that really just kind of crept up on me. I saw the trailer, I saw the cast, and I was like, this looks awesome. I think based off the cast that this is going to be a fantastic film. And that was The Dead Don't Die. You get a cast like this with Bill Murray, Adam Driver, Tom Waits, Chloe Sevigny. I can never say her last name correctly. Steve Buscemi, Danny Glover, RZA, I want to say Tilda Swinton. Was it Tilda Swinton? I want to say it was Tilda. Also Selena Gomez. Tilda Swinton. Even Iggy Pop. And it's like, oh wow, this is a great cast, and it's a zombie movie. Set in a small town. Where Bill Murray and Adam Driver are the cops, and like I said, the zombie apocalypse starts happening. I was like, on paper, this movie with this cast looks like it could not fail. The trailer looked funny, and I thought, I was just like, this is going to be great. Ultimately, this movie did not. It was this just missed just outside of my worst movies of 2019. It really wasn't funny at all. It was rather boring. It felt like there was just like a missed opportunity after missed opportunity. They would introduce these new characters, like let's say Selena Gomez's character. Spoiler warning right now for these films, so heads up on that. They introduce a character like Selena Gomez's character, and they kind of go through the I would say generic, but kind of like the situation where it's like, oh, here's the girl who's with a bunch of popular kids who all act like jerks, but she's the one girl who kind of understands and is nice to the nerdy kid and stuff like that. And then the very next scene, you just find her dead. And it's just like, you wasted like 5-10 minutes of film to introduce this character, bring her into the film, make you be like, oh, okay, I wonder where this character's going to go. And then just ultimately just don't use her. You just say, oh, she dies off screen. Which is, then like, that's just kind of like what it was for most of these these characters. You introduce these characters throughout, and then you ultimately just kill them off in a non-important fashion. And then you got Tilda Swinton's character, who's like this weird samurai kind of character who's kind of like a Michonne from The Walking Dead type, and she just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. Like everything else is very small town like, and then you have her who just sticks out like a sore thumb. And Tilda Swinton does a solid job with the role, but then it gets to the point where it gets to the end of the film. Like I said, spoilers, and instead of going, oh, her, Bill Murray, Adam Driver, they're going to go down in a blaze of glory, or they're going to survive the zombie apocalypse, all of a sudden just a random freaking spaceship comes through, and you find out that she's an alien, and she's all like, oh, bye, everybody, and then just gets shot up into the sky and just leaves. It's just like, what the heck just happened? Like, this makes no sense. Like, we're watching a zombie movie. Nothing. I mean, yes, it's a zombie movie. It's already kind of unbelievable in a sense, but everything around is pretty much grounded. And then you have this weird character, and it's just almost like the director just decided, screw this. I'm just gonna go off the rails, and let's just make her an alien, and she gets transported out of that area and survives. And then you have Bill Murray and Adam Driver's characters. Bill Murray knows exactly what movies he's in. Bill Murray was great in the film. I have nothing against Bill Murray, but then you have Adam Driver's character, who is kind of just acting negative the entire time. He's like, oh, that's just his character. And every time Bill Murray tries to do something or tries to survive or tries to go, oh, we're gonna overcome this, Adam Driver's character is like, no, we're not. This is doomed. This is hopeless. This is pointless. To the point when Bill Murray finally just says, what the hell is wrong with you? Why are you always like this? And then Adam Driver basically goes, didn't you read the script? And it's just, and then it just goes full on meta and breaks the film, going, oh, I read the script to this movie. We don't survive at the end of the film. And then Bill Murray breaks character, going, wait, the director gave you the script? Yeah, didn't you read it? No. And he's like, so how does it end? Well, not good for us. So it kind of just, like, the whole end of the film basically is the director just decides to say F it and just let it go completely off the rails. And I get, for some people who like the meta aspect of films, this probably sounds like a cool concept, but ultimately you wasted this whole time of this film to building up these characters, making you enjoy or care about these characters in a sense, and then either A, don't do anything with them except kill them off right away, or B, just kind of shit all over everything you just watched by just kind of breaking the fourth wall and making it just seem like that the actors don't care. And if the actors don't care, why should I care as a character or as a viewer watching this film? And that's why The Dead Don't Die definitely pops in as number 10 on the most disappointing. The reason why it's number 10 and not higher, because I would love to make it higher, is that it was a movie that just kind of showed up, and I saw one trailer. I was like, oh, I got my hopes up right away for it, but ultimately it was just not a good film. Like I said, it was just outside the worst of 2019 for me, but that's why it ends up at the number 10 spot for most disappointing of the year. Going to number 9, this one I actually liked for the most part. It's just that my expectation levels for it were so high, and it just didn't reach it for me. And that is Midsummer, or Midsommar, depending on how you want to say it, from Ari Aster. Now, anyone who knows the show or watches me knows that I am 100% a lover of Hereditary. It was one of my favorite films, if not my favorite film of 2018. So when Ari Aster said, hey, here comes another movie, it's about a cult in Sweden. And then you got Florence Pugh, who I think is a fantastic actress. You got Jack Rayner, who is fantastic in Sing Street. You got Will Poulter. I was like, okay, this looks creepy and very colorful, very bright. This is going to be great because this is the same guy who did Hereditary, and Hereditary was phenomenal. I can't wait to see this. And then you watch it, and it's just like not at all what you expected. It didn't even really feel like a horror film at all. It was just kind of a weird movie to just watch. Does it look fantastic? Absolutely. Is it very colorful and dynamic? Absolutely. Is it very well acted? Absolutely. I think Florence Pugh puts on a fantastic performance as Danny. I think Jack Rayner does a great job playing a kind of a douchebag boyfriend and Christian. And just the dynamic of what's happening is a very uneasy, unnerving feeling throughout the entire film. And there are certain moments that happen that are just like, what the hell is this? It's just that it never ever reached the heights or the scares or any of that it did with Hereditary. And so ultimately it was a rather kind of a disappointment to me, because as I was watching it, because it's a really long movie, I'm just watching it going, okay, it's fine. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. It's not Hereditary. And that's the main problem for me. So if you loved Hereditary, you're probably not going to like Midsummer. If you didn't like Hereditary, maybe you will like Midsummer, or you'll hate it as well. But it was one of those things, like the first 5 minutes of Midsummer really sets you on a very uneasy path. Like the first 5 minutes is insane on what they do to Danny's character. Kind of like just right off the bat going, oh, wow, cannot believe that happened to her. And then there are certain moments throughout, but then it gets to the point where near the end of the movie, there's this one pivotal scene, and instead of being uneasy and scared, you're kind of just laughing at it. Like when I was in the theater watching it, people were laughing and we're just having a fun time poking at it, instead of like being in this uneasy moment like we were with Hereditary. So ultimately, Midsummer, like I said, a great overall film. I would recommend it for people who want that kind of weird. I still don't want to call it horror, because there was never any moment in the film where I was like, "This is a scary movie," but just like a weird cult kind of film that I 100% recommend it. But it just did not reach my levels of expectation based off of what we got last year with Ari Aster's Hereditary, and that's why it's number 9 on the list. Going to number 8. This movie, ever since I saw the trailer for it, have been super, super excited for it, because I was like, this looks great. I feel good watching the trailer. It makes me feel good. I feel like the movie itself is going to do a really good job. And for the most part, this movie did its job. It did make me feel good. But then there were certain things that happened in the film that really kind of soured me towards it. And that's why it's on the list, and that is Yesterday. When I first saw the trailer for Yesterday, about a man who is a failed musician, who after the world goes into a blackout, he's the only person that remembers the Beatles. So instead of just going about his normal life, he decides, I'm just gonna take ownership of these songs, and I'm gonna become one of the greatest songwriters ever by remembering all the Beatles songs and trying to take them as my own. The premise of it is very unique, and it's a fun premise to it too, because he's always in that constant fear of, what if someone else in the world actually knows who the Beatles are, and they're gonna know that I'm a fraud? And that beat throughout the movie adds great tension to his character. Hamish Patel, who plays Jack Malik, I think he does a great job in the movie. He's a solid singer, so when he does sing the songs, it's rather enjoyable. He's not like Beatles level great singer, but he's good enough to be good enough for the role that he's doing. You also got Ed Sheeran as a co-star role in the film as himself. I thought he did a solid job. Here's the problem, and the reason why it's on my list is Lily James. She plays his manager, Ellie. There's this she's in love with him, but he doesn't see it kind of thing. So she's pining for him, and she wants him to succeed because of how passionate he is about wanting to be famous and do something about music with his life. That she tries everything to do to get him gigs, and then she's in love with him and she wants to be with him. But then he finally becomes famous, and like I said, spoiler warning for this, he finally becomes famous, and then she's like, choose me over your career. And then it's just like, what the hell? That's not like even you've spent half the film showing me that you're this character who's very supportive of his dreams, wants him to thrive, wants him to be the best he can be. And then once he does this and he becomes this amazing singer and this worldwide phenomenon, You wanted to throw it all away so he can be with you, and you be because you're a teacher and you don't want to leave your small town. And so he finally does exactly what you've been trying to do as a manager, but now you want him to throw it all away so he can be with you, which he even, at that point, he's even like, be with me, come with me. And she's like, no, choose me or the music, which is, at that point, I'm just like, F you. Like, I love Lily James. I think she's incredibly adorable in this film. And I loved her up to that point. But then it's like, once they did this character decision with her, it just soured me because it made me seem like she never really cared about his dreams at all. It was just more or less a manipulation to try to get him to fall in love with her. And that's the only reason why she was his manager. Not because she wanted him to become this famous singer, not because she wanted him to become what he wanted to be, but just so that way she could be close to him. And then once he grew bigger, and she was starting to feel like she couldn't hold on to that, she wanted him to throw it all away, which ultimately is what he ends up doing at the end of the film, which I just did not agree with. So this guy just completely throws billions of dollars out of the way and just says, hey, these songs are written by this phantom group called the Beatles that you don't know about. I love this girl and I'm gonna go be with her, which, obviously they give the whole happily ever after kind of thing, but it's like, what in 6 months if they break up? Dude, you just gave away your entire career that was going to set you for life, set your future and your future children and stuff for life, to just date a girl and in hopes that it works out, which, I mean, in hindsight, we wanted to work out and stuff like that, but it's like, you just threw that all away, all because she wasn't willing to follow you to your dreams. She could have been a teacher anywhere. But she wanted you to give up being one of the best songwriters, albeit though you're giving, you're copying the Beatles, but to everyone else in the world, they don't remember the Beatles. You gave up being one of the best songwriters of all time to be with the love of your life. And even then, it's not the love of your life because you've been with her all this time and you never really found out that you loved her until after you became famous. It's like, at that point, dude, it's like, dude, there's plenty of women out there. I'm sure you could find someone. Instead, you have this girl who you wouldn't take notice of until she finally stopped, trying. It's just the whole part of it. Just I hate stories that do that because it makes it seem like if the guy continues to follow his dream, that he's a jerk. And they try to frame it that way, and I hated that they did that to Lily James's character. It just soured me the whole time. And then of course you also have what's her name? From SNL. She plays his manager. I actually really like her normally. Kate McKinnon. You have Kate McKinnon. She plays his manager, and she's just in a different movie. In this film overall, she's mean. She's not funny. Like, the dude's kind of like an insecure guy anyways. Like, he doesn't really come off pompous at all for the most part. Like, there's the occasional moment where he will, but she just kind of comes in and just berates him and just talks down to him and makes him feel shitty about himself. And while everyone else is talking great to him, and then she just kind of comes in and just rains on his parade. And she just does not fit in this movie. It's like, she is in an entirely different movie than what this movie is. And every time she's on screen, like I said, I love Kate McKinnon. I think she's a fantastic comedian. And I love her in a lot of things she's in, but I hated her in this film. And she just didn't have to be that way. Like, they didn't have to make her character like that. And every time she comes in, it's for comedic value, and it fails every single time because she just comes off as a horrible person. It just did not fit with the rest of the flow of the film. So with those two reasons, plus how the film ended, like I said, there's so much good about this movie, but this character turn by Lily James, and then of course Kate McKinnon's manager character, really soured me in terms of the film overall, and that is why it is number 8 on, or number 7 or number 8, number 8 on the list. Going to number 7, and I know this is going to be a very unpopular opinion because I know this is considered one of the year's best films of the year, but not for me, and that is The Irishman. Now, you've been billing this movie for the past year that this is Martin Scorsese's masterpiece that he got Pacino, Pesci, De Niro all back together again. He used de-aging equipment so that way they could, move through, 40 to 60 years of story, and it's one of the best movies ever made, blah, 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 blah. You built this up, and it's 3.5 hours long, which it's like, okay, there's only been like a few 3.5 hour long movies that have actually been able to keep your attention, and like that's not like Lord of the Rings. So you get this movie, The Irishman, and oh my god, is this movie boring. I tried watching this. I sat and watched this movie in one sitting. I felt like I was being punished watching this movie. Yes, it is a great film. It is very well acted by all three men. It is very well shot. I see a great film in there from Scorsese. This is not me saying that this movie is a bad film. I can see the brilliance of what Scorsese did with this. I can see great performances out of these three actors, but it is so boring. I kept checking my watch, which if I have to check my watch when watching a movie, that's a problem. I checked my watch at 40 minutes and I was like, oh my god, I still have like 3 hours left. Checked it again an hour later. I still have 2 hours left of this movie. Checked it again. Oh, I still have 40 more minutes left of this movie. It was a chore to get through this. And I knew that if I stopped it, I was never going to come back. So I forced myself to sit through and watch this entire film. It's not exciting. The one exciting part of the film isn't until the last hour. And then even then, it just kind of happens, and then it pitter-patters away. You got a great cast in the film, but ultimately you use them to nothing. You have Anna Paquin, who plays Robert De Niro's daughter in the film. You gave her like 7 words to say in this entire film. I get that her silence in the film is supposed to speak volumes. But you get someone like that, you want her to actually be able to do some having some actual lines. If you wanted someone to just look disapproving the entire film, you could have gotten any actress to do that, and I think they would have done it just as well as Anna Paquin than to just waste her in that role. Jesse Plemons, fantastic actor, completely wasted. Pretty much, Harvey Keitel, completely wasted. I will say Ray Romano. I really liked Ray Romano's character. I thought he did a solid job. And like I said, the main three, Pesci, De Niro, and Pacino, they're all great. But it's just like everyone else is completely wasted in this film. The de-aging, I'm sorry. There's no way you can make those three guys look as young as you're trying to do. De Niro and Pesci look horrible the first time you see them super young. It just looks very, especially De Niro. Pesci you can kind of get away with, but De Niro, he's got like these like ruby colored blue eyes. He looks like a White Walker from the Game of Thrones. It looks unnatural. It looks very wrong. It takes about 15 minutes for your eyes to adjust to it. And then there are certain scenes where he's beating up a guy, and it's like he's like, okay, cool, he's beating up a guy, but he's supposed to be like in his 20s or 30s while he's doing this, but he's moving like a 60-year-old man because he is 60. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, Scorsese, I get you really want to use the same actors through all these time frames, but it doesn't look good when you're trying to make them do physical scenes like that. As I said, ultimately, the movie is just a bore to get through. It's like I said, great dialogue, but just not an exciting film to watch all the way through, unlike something like The Departed or Shutter Island or any other Scorsese film you could possibly think of. Irishman, I get it. It's going to be up for rewards. A lot of people love this movie. It just was not for me, and they talked it up profusely to the point where I was ready to go for it. And ultimately, I kind of wish I just had never seen it. And I could have gotten those 3.5 hours back. And that's why The Irishman is number 7 on the list. Going to number 6, this was on my most anticipated of 2019 because of the franchise that it was about. But even as I was talking about it in my most anticipated, I was a little weary of it from the trailers. And it did not disappoint in terms of my worriness of it, and that is Men in Black International. When I did my most anticipated list last year, this was on that list, and I was like, I'm worried because it feels like Chris Hemsworth's basically just playing Thor, but as a Men in Black agent. and they even have a Thor joke in the trailer. And I was like, this worries me because I feel like they can't separate themselves from the Thor character and to just do something unique with Men in Black. And I was worried about that going into the film. But I was like, you know what? It's Chris Hemsworth. It's Tessa Thompson. They should be great together because they're great in Thor Ragnarok. So I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. You watch this movie, and it is the most bland, or forgettable Men in Black movie out of the three. And that's saying a lot because 2 out of the 3 original Men in Blacks aren't necessarily that great. It's not even bad. It's just forgettable. Like, you watched it, and then 10 minutes later, you're like, I totally forgot what I watched. Tessa Thompson is just kind of going through the motions in this film. Chris Hemsworth, once again, kind of just trying to play like a Thor kind of egotistical kind of character. You know, he's the renegade agent that kind of doesn't follow rules and just kind of jumps in head first. The only real highlight of the film was Kumail Nanjiani as I can't think of what his little alien name was, but he was Pawnee. He was the only fun thing about the movie. It's just he was the only thing that made you be able to get through the film. Emma Thompson's back at H&O. You had Liam Neeson as Agent High T. You had Rafe Spall at Agent C, who was so far left in terms of what his character was that it's like, oh, he's clearly going to be the bad guy. And it's like, no, he's not going to be the bad guy because you're going so far into trying to tell me he's the bad guy that I know there's going to be a twist later in the film and he's going to end up being the good guy. It's like they did not try to keep this movie hidden. They didn't try to shock you. And then when the big twist happens at the end of the film, you're like, well, no shit. Like, of course that's what's going to be because you basically have been showing me through the entire film that this is what was going to happen. So you're expecting this big, like, it's like, well, duh. I've watched movies before. You've done nothing to make me think otherwise that this was what was going to happen. You have these 2 twin aliens who are basically like dancers in real life that you give them 0 vocal lines. They bring nothing to it outside of a dance sequence. So the whole point of like a good villain is completely wasted. You did get Rebecca Ferguson popping in at one point as this one alien creature. I actually liked her in her small little moment, but she's not in the movie long enough to really leave a lasting impression. Plus, they do something at the beginning of the film with Tessa Thompson's character as a kid, and you're watching that, and I'm like, well, clearly that's going to come back. And then when it does, you're just like, well, duh. And so that's just thing. It's poorly written. It's very like by the numbers written. It kind of just felt like they just didn't give enough effort to this film. It's just like, let's just make a Men in Black movie. Let's throw Thor and Valkyrie in it because people love Thor and Valkyrie, and we're gonna make a ton of money. And that's not what's going to happen because, frankly, the movie just looks uninspired. It was boring to watch, and it was, like I said, unforgivable. You can't have 3, if you count Nanjiani, 3 charismatic actors in terms of Hemsworth, Tessa Thompson, and Nanjiani, and just make it a very just blah movie. And that's ultimately what you did with Men in Black International, and that's why it's on the list at number 6. Number 5, it's actually a tie. I decided instead of making this one or one of these 5 or one of these 6, I decided to just kind of lump them together since they both have the same plot in a sense, and that is Shazam and Captain Marvel. Shazam, that first trailer was so good. It was so good, and like it looked fun. It looked like a superhero version of Big. It looked great. I'm a huge fan of Zachary Levi. He's one of my favorite actors. I think he's like, and I'm a huge fan of Chuck. So I watched him from that, and it was kind of like when Ryan Reynolds was coming up in Two Guys That Go on a Pizza Place. I was like, this guy's gonna be great. I'm gonna follow his career, and Ryan Reynolds became Ryan Reynolds. Zachary Levi's the same way. I loved him in Chuck, and I was like, I can't wait to watch him and what he's gonna become. And Shazam's kind of his big here I am moment. I mean, he's been in other things, but this is my starring role kind of deal. So I was real excited for Zachary Levi, and I want him to have this amazing moment. You also had Mark Strong, who's a fantastic character villain who hasn't been a villain in a couple years. So seeing him come back, I was real excited for that. You have Jack Dylan Grazer. I loved him in It Chapter 1 and eventually It Chapter 2. So, I mean, you have a great cast going through this. It's just that the trailer we got and everything that I loved about that trailer was basically in a 5-minute montage in the movie. So it was like all the good parts that I loved about that trailer, we got in 5 minutes of the film, which was basically the trailer. And it's just the movie, it was fine. I liked it. I liked Shazam. I really enjoyed it, but it just never hit my excitement or expectation level that I was expecting it to hit. I felt like Zachary Levi's Shazam, as fun as he wasn't acting like the version of the kid that he was portraying, which was Asher Angel's Billy Batson. I don't feel like Zachary Levi's Shazam was Billy. He acted more like Freddie Freeman's character, which was Jack Dylan Grazer. Never did Angel or Asher Angel's Billy Batson ever feel like the way Shazam acted. So they just felt like two separate characters in a sense. Whereas like Freddie felt more like who Shazam was. I love how, and I don't love him being sarcastic on this, they teetered with trying to make scary monsters be the villains, but then, and you have them do these very monstrous kind of things, but you still wanted to make this movie PG-13, so you didn't show the violence and the gore of it. I mean, you literally had like the sin, the 7 deadly sins. You make them these generic looking monsters who have no personality. You could have done so much with these creatures. You could have had the creatures be embodiments of their sins and have them be able to control people based off of their sins. You could have had them affect people in different ways with like gluttony and greed and all that. And you could have had them affect Shazam. You have the 7 deadly sins. Use them for what they are instead of just being generic monster 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You had one bite the head off of a dude and basically murder a whole like office room of people, but there was no blood. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. It's just like you're not even gonna you show some of the violence, but then you don't show it, and then like you cover it with windows, but then you don't have any blood splatter because you don't want it to look too violent. But you just watched a monster bite the head off of one dude. It just didn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's very half-assed in a way. And then the final battle, it had its cool moments, but at the same time, it was just it could have been so much more. And that's the thing with Shazam. Like, yes, you had a great story arc for Billy Batson with him being an abandoned child, and when he gets to find his mother, that's a great scene, great moment for Asher Angel. But just like it was like the whole movie was building to that scene, and then we just had fun antics when he was Shazam, and it didn't flow the way I expected it to flow or the way I wanted it to flow. And like I said, the 7 deadly sins were completely wasted. Even Mark Strong as Dr. Savani, I felt was wasted. Like I said, we're going to get a sequel to this. I'm sure that they're going to take what didn't work in Shazam and they'll make it better in the sequel. And I'm excited for the sequel. I can't wait to see what they do with it. And like I said, I like Shazam, but there's a lot wrong with the movie. And that's why it ends up number 5 on the list, because I could see what it could have become. It could have been this fantastic superhero film, could have been one of the year's best, and it ultimately just was a solid horror or solid superhero movie that just had so much potential that they just did not fully grasp. Captain Marvel, on the other hand, is one of those where I saw the trailer, I wasn't impressed, went in with hopes that it was going to change my mind, and it didn't. It was one of those where I was hoping that Marvel was going to do something because it's Marvel. You know what? I'm not excited for this movie, but you know what? It's Marvel. They're going to do something to kind of change my mind. This movie's going to be great. I just got to let it be great. And it just never was. The movie is just very, also, like I said, bland. The movie really, it takes over an hour for this movie really to get going. Once Carol goes to Rambo's house, Maria Rambo, her best friend, once she goes to her farm, that's when I felt like the movie finally really kicked into gear. Yes, there's some fun action sequences up to that point with with Carol and the Scruggs. But it's like I just don't. You were watching, you're like, I don't quite know what movie they're trying to make yet. We spent the entire time watching Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel, but by the end of the film, I still didn't really fully grasp who she was. Like, I watch a Superman film, I know who Clark Kent is, or Kal-El by the end of the movie. I watch a Batman film, I know who Bruce Wayne is as a character by the end of the movie. Same thing with Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Thor. By the end of this movie, I still really had no idea who Carol Danvers was as a character. Like, they just didn't do enough to really, carry her as a character throughout this film. So when she shows up at Endgame, like, cool, I know she's super powerful, so she should be able to stand up against Thanos, but I don't care. Like, I don't care about a character. If her character died in Endgame, I would have been like, all right, well, that sucks, but okay, cool, whatever. Whereas, like, if anyone else dies, heartbreaking. I just didn't care. And this is nothing against Brie Larson. I love Brie Larson as an actress, but it's just they did not do their job of trying to make you care about her, because there's never any moments where they just really make you feel for the character of Carol Danvers. I cared about Maria Rambeau. Nick Fury. I thought Samuel Jackson did a solid job, and I thought the de-aging looked great on him. I thought Ben Mendelsohn as Talos. I really liked Ben Mendelsohn in this film. I thought he was having fun doing this role. I mean, heck, I even cared about the cat. Was it Chewie? I can't remember. But I mean, you had a lackluster villain in Jan Rog, who played by Jude Law, who I love Jude Law, but it's just his character wasn't even that great. You had Annette Bening, who you ultimately did nothing with as a character. You had the 80s nostalgia, or the 90s nostalgia in the film just did not work. When you finally get her to have her big battle at the end against the rest of the core, you play I'm Just a Girl from No Doubt. The song does not fit what we're watching. It was a bad song choice. It was very forced song choice. It's just, there wasn't a whole lot that worked with Captain Marvel, in my opinion. Like, it looked good, and it was passable, but it definitely didn't do anything to drive me towards enjoying Captain Marvel or really even getting excited for any other sequels that this movie had to come up with, which is why it was one of my worst rated MCU movies, and ultimately a disappointment, because even though I wasn't excited for the movie when it came out, I was fully expecting the movie to at least avert my expectations and do what MCU does and go, hey, they're going to take care of this. I'm going to have a good time watching it. And frankly, I just spent the entire time watching it just going, okay. Which it ultimately seemed to be kind of the main consensus for a lot of people. Not a lot of people enjoyed the movie. Not a lot of people were excited about the movie. And that's why it ends up tied with Shazam as number 5 for most disappointing films of the year. Going to number 4, this one just hurt me. I am a huge fan of these books. I read them cover to cover more times than I can count when I was a kid. And when they announced that they were going to make this into a movie, I got so damn excited. And it ultimately just broke my heart watching this movie. And that is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I love this book series. It is I think it's a fantastic anthology of scary stories. And when they said, we're going to make this into a feature film, I was like, yes, could not wait to see it. And what we end up getting is not a movie about these scary stories, but a generic horror movie plot that we have seen 1,000 times before, with some stories from the Scary Movie or Scary Stories franchise, but ultimately they're just used to kind of fill in a plot of a generic ghost story that none of us wanted to see. None of us gave a crap about this generic girl who wrote these stories and then used them to kill generic kids in a small town. None of us wanted that. What we wanted was a movie about the stories from these books. And we got 5 of them, but they did, even then, like, and I will say this, the movie visually is fantastic. Each story, when they are used, looks incredible. but the acting is lackluster. The story is lackluster. It's a slap in the face to anyone who loved these books. And then to have the nerve to, at the end of this, try to build this off into a sequel franchise, just giant middle finger from this. Because the way it ended is like, the story's going to continue. Not with me, it won't, because I'm not going to watch this because this movie sucked. It was not a good film. You took something that I loved and you crapped all over it. What they should have done with this is they should have either done a film where every story in the book was like 5 to 10 minutes long, and we went through in a whole like kind of anthology film just showing movie versions of these stories, which I thought would have been fantastic. Or you should have taken this book series to Netflix or HBO or something like that and did like their own versions of Tales from the Crypt and done each story as an episode. Maybe some episodes are 10 minutes long, some episodes are 30 to 40 minutes long. That's what they should have done with this instead of the garbage that we got with this movie. I don't want to blame the cast because I think the kids in this movie were solid, but they're generic stereotypes in the movie. It's just this movie's a great and utter disappointment. Like I said, visually it looked great, but it's a generic B subplot horror film. You know exactly what they need to do in order to defeat the ghost at the end of the movie, and they just try to lure you into this shitty plot by using scary stories to tell in the dark, and that is why it's number 4 on the list. Going to number 3, never ever did I think that this would ever end up in my most disappointing films of 2019 because I love this franchise. It's one of my favorites, but ultimately the third and final film of this franchise just was not that great. And that is How to Train Your Dragon 3: The Hidden World. I love How to Train Your Dragon. I thought the first one was really good. I loved the second one. It was one of my favorites of the year when it came out. I can't remember what year it was, but it was one of my favorites. So when this was going to be the final one, I was like, this is going to hurt because I don't want to say goodbye to these characters, but I'm excited to see it. And ultimately, this movie's just not that great. It's the worst of the trilogy. You build up this really scary, almost unbeatable bad guy in this movie, and and then you just turn him. F. Murray Abraham, he plays Grimmel. That's the bad guy in this one. They the first half of the film they build him up into this like unstoppable force. And how is Hiccup and Toothless and then the rest of the group going to be able to stop him? And then halfway through the film, you turn him into a bumbling, generic villain that they dispatch of relatively easily by the end of the film. And it's like, did you guys just run out of script? Did you guys forget what movie you guys were writing for? Because you built him up. This is the final film of the franchise. You need to have a big villain. They did a fantastic job with the villain in the second film. Like, you had this epic battle with him in the second movie, and then this guy's like, oh, this is gonna be great. You have 2 scary dragons with him that seem to be like almost monsters in a sense, and then you dispatch them, and Grimmel is basically just a bumbling kind of generic villain that they took care of in 5 minutes. It was a failed attempt. It was a complete just kind of waste in terms of a great character that they had built throughout the entire film. And then the twins, Rough Nut and Tough Nut. First off, you didn't even get TJ Miller back. You got some generic guy named Justin Rupel to try to act like TJ Miller. And then you gave him so much screen time. These characters are cringeworthy at best. They're best used in small doses, but instead of using the small doses, you make them like the second or the third and fourth most popular or most used character in the film outside of Astrid and Hiccup. You gave them way too much dialogue. You gave them way too much screen time, and I hated the movie whenever they were on screen. Like I said, Kristen Wiig, take her or leave her. She's either really good or she's bad. I think she's quite an overrated actress personally. But anytime Rough Nut and Tough Nut are on screen, I immediately hated this film. I liked them in the other movies because they were used sparingly and at the right moments. When they were in the other films, I thought their moments were great because they were put in at the right time. This movie, they were oversaturated, they were overused, their jokes aren't funny, and they are just a detractor from the film. And then the final part of the film is the ending. I don't buy that Toothless would go 5+ something years without seeing Hiccup, or vice versa. It's kind of a spit in the face of the friendship between Hiccup and Toothless. They are never apart from each other, and you're telling me that just because Hiccup finds this hidden world of dragons, that Toothless would just completely abandon their friendship and not see them anymore. Now, sure, I'm sure they'll probably do like little spin-off films or little spin-off like TV specials where we'll see that they do hang out through that. But the way the movie ends, it makes it seem like Hiccup has not seen Toothless since the end parts of the film, and he doesn't know if he's going to show up. And then he does show up at the end, but it's like I don't buy that they would go 5 years without seeing each other. That friendship that we've been building through for 2 films and a TV series. I don't buy that, and ultimately, like I said, the sequel just feels like a slap in the face compared to the rest of the franchise, and it was ultimately an utter disappointment in terms of the film overall, and that's why it ended up at number 3 on the list. It's still a good movie, and it visually looks fantastic, but it just did not. It was really, really under impressive and a disappointment to me overall. Number 2, this one, wow. This one was in my top 5 for most anticipated. I think it was my number 3 or 4 most anticipated film of 2019. There was no possible way for me to think this movie was going to fail. I was like, this is going to probably be one of the best movies of the year. It looks fantastic. The cast is top-notch A-list cast. There's no way this film's going to fail. And then ultimately it failed horribly. And that is Disney's live action The Lion King. How do you fail making this movie? It's quite simple. You had Jon Favreau, who's a phenomenal director. He did wonders with The Jungle Book. He did wonders with Mandalorian and Iron Man and all this stuff. And he's like, you know what? Let me do it with Lion King. Here's the problem with Lion King. In Jungle Book, you had Mowgli. So you had a human character who can interact with the animals, and the animals worked very well. Well, Lion King's all animals. And the biggest thing about Lion King, the animated film, is that you felt the heartache and the love and everything through these characters through their eyes. Because they had cartoon eyes, and you could make them wide, you can make them sad, you can do all this kind of stuff. But with this, you have everything looking so realistic, including the eyes, that you couldn't feel emotions from these characters. When Mufasa dies, you didn't cry because little Simba could not show you emotion in this moment. And right then and there, I knew that this movie was done. Because if I didn't feel sad when Mufasa died because of Simba's reaction to it, there was no way the rest of the film was going to work. The only thing that worked in this film was Timon and Pumbaa, played by Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner. I thought they did great. James Earl Jones, they made him come back and do Mufasa. He sleptwalked through it. They could have just used the same dialogue, or they could have just recorded his dialogue from the first film and just put it in there. Would have been fine. Chiwetel Ejiofor as Scar, I thought was all right. But when you don't sing, be prepared. And we know Chiwetel can sing. I've seen him sing. And he basically just speaks Be Prepared, which is one of the best villain songs in Disney history. And he fails at that. It's so bad. Beyonce is not good in this movie. Beyonce is just being Beyonce. Does she ever feel like Nala in the movie? It's so bad. Her song, which is nominated for an Oscar, which is just like, okay, that's just Disney putting their money into the Oscars. Her song is bad. It has no business being an Oscar-nominated song. Everyone else, like I will say that the kids who played young Simba and young Nala, they were good. JD McCrary and Shahadi Wright Joseph. I thought they were solid as young Simba, young Nala. But and then let's not forget the part with the hula dancing. In the original, when Timon and Pumbaa want to do a distraction, when they try to take back Pride Rock, it's a great hula dance number. It's very funny. In this, they sing "Be Our Guest" from Beauty and the Beast. Like, just wow. Awful. And then you take one of the biggest moments of the film where Simba is talking to Mufasa in the clouds. It's a phenomenal moment in the original, and you don't even have Mufasa in the clouds. You have what looks like the shape of a lion's head with lightning, but it's too realistic to make it out, because I guess Jon Favreau thought it would be unrealistic to have a lion in the clouds talking to another lion, even though they are lions talking to one another. It makes no damn sense. It does not look good in that part. Like, I'll admit the movie looks fantastic. The animals look great. But the problem is that we need to feel their hope, their joy, their sadness, their suffering to really care about these. And we don't get that in any of the film. And ultimately, it was just a complete and utter disaster. It was a complete and utter failure. When I reviewed this earlier in the year, I said, this movie is a fantastic film if you never saw the original Lion King, which, let's face it, we all have. I could not, if you came to me in December of last year and said, Sean, Lion King is going to be one of the worst disappointments of 2019, I would have said, you're crazy. There's no possible way that movie is going to fail. I would have lost. Because with this cast and with Favreau and the way it visually looked, there's no way this movie should have sucked, and it sucked the life out of you. And that is why it is number 2 on my most disappointed list of 2019. And frankly, it should be number 1, but number 1 just pissed me off. So going into the number 1 most disappointing film of 2019, it's Glass. Unbreakable was good for what it was. I didn't think it was great, but it was good. I loved Split. Split was one of my favorite films of 2017 or 16 when it came out. I thought James McAvoy should have been nominated for an Oscar for his performance as everyone in this film, or mostly Patricia, Dennis, and Hedwig, and the Beast. Obviously he plays like 20 other roles, but those were the main 4. I think it was incredibly well done. Anya Taylor-Joy did a great job, and then that teaser at the end to show that it was the sequel to Unbreakable, and knowing that this film was going to be the trilogy finale, bringing Samuel Jackson back as Elijah Pierce and Bruce Willis coming back as David Dunn, and oh my god, I was so excited for this film, and it was gonna be great, and it was boring as hell. Nothing against James McAvoy. I still think he knocked it out of the park in this film. He still brought that same energy he had with Split. He was the only redeeming quality in this film. Bruce Willis walked through this entire movie. You could tell he didn't really care to be there or wanted to be there. Samuel Jackson, when they used him, I thought was solid. But they waited way too long. Sarah Paulson was completely pointless in this film. Anya Taylor-Joy had, up until the last moments of the film, was completely wasted in the film. I did think it was really cool that they brought Spencer Treat Clark back as Bruce Willis' son. I thought that was a nice continuation from Unbreakable. But this movie just, instead of giving us a superhero battle, they kept building up to this battle that was going to happen. And ultimately, they're like, let's just have them fight on the front lawn of this mental institution. And while it was a fun fight, it just didn't reach the expectations or the heights it could have reached. And that's M. Night being M. Night Shyamalan. What you think you're going to get, you're not going to get. Now, either that could be great or it could be dog shit. And more times than not, it ends up being dog shit. And this is what happened there. And then the twist for M. Night Shyamalan did not work this time around. They had this just secret organization just show up and kind of kill everyone. Did not work for me. It just felt like everything that I had watched previously with Unbreakable and Split was a waste of time. Kind of like what it felt like with How to Train Your Dragon Hidden World. It's like you built up two movies, you made me want to watch this, you made me want to be excited to watch these films, and then ultimately you just made me feel stupid for caring and for wanting to love these films. And Glass is the one movie that I think that just, like, Lion King messed up bad, but they at least went for it. I felt like Glass, they just didn't want to go for it fully. They were like, you know what? We want to keep telling you that we are the original superhero movie and we want to make it as realistic possible. So let's just consistently keep telling you what a superhero story is, but then not give you a superhero story. Let's constantly put a movie of just us sitting in chairs and telling these superheroes that they're just crazy people and not superheroes. When they are superheroes, we don't want them to think they're superheroes, so they don't act like superheroes. Oh, and yeah, and then when they do it, we're supposed to be shocked by it. It was bland, it was boring, it took forever, and then when they finally did something cool, it was too little too late, and then they screwed it all up with a twist ending, and that's why Glass is the most disappointing film of 2019. It just literally just made me go that anything else that M. Night Shyamalan comes out with, because I will say this, M. Night Shyamalan is a phenomenal con artist. I know that's a hot take. He is a con artist. He is one of those people who knows how to make a trailer look amazing and to make you feel like this is going to be this phenomenal film. And you go and you get excited and you go and you sit in his theater, and then he cons you into thinking that this is going to be a good movie. Now, I will give you Split. Split was fantastic. I liked Signs, and The Sixth Sense was one of the biggest shocker films of its time. But that's 3 movies out of what he's done. And he loves making you believe that his movies are going to be great, and they just turn out to be complete and utter crap. And he don't care, because you go to the movies and he gets his money. And that's why I feel like M. Night's one of the biggest con artist directors in Hollywood. And Glass is a prime example of that. You had no reason to make this movie fail. You had no reason for this film to be as bad as it was. Except for just saying, I'm going to make this one movie. I don't care how many people get pissed off at it. I'm choosing to do it this way, and y'all suck. And that's what I felt like this movie was M. Night going, middle finger. I know you guys aren't going to enjoy this movie, but I enjoy it, and that's all that matters. And that's why, like I said, the movie just makes me incredibly mad. And I felt like a complete waste of my time with Split. But that's the list. So rounding out the full top 10, we'll go to the list here real quick for people who maybe kind of didn't watch me talk about all these movies, which shame on you. But yeah, the top 10 list for most disappointing movies of 2019 so far. Number 10, The Dead Don't Die. Number 9, Midsummer. Number 8, Yesterday. Number 7, The Irishman. Number 6, Men in Black International. Number 5, Shazam and Captain Marvel. Number 4, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Number 3, How to Train Your Dragon Hidden World. Number 2, Disney's live-action version of The Lion King. And number 1, Glass. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like button. If you feel like this video is worth sharing, go ahead and hit that share button. But most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that pop up on Sean's Movie Crusades. And, of course, don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, we are going to be a little more happier with what we're talking about as we go into the top 10 most surprising films of 2019. So a video about movies that I did not expect to be great that ended up being really awesome. So we're going to turn away from the negative and go into the positive. So be on the lookout for that one coming up. And then after that, we also got the most anticipated films of 2020 coming up. And then once I see a couple more films, because there's a couple movies that are still out that I have not got to see, we will have our best of 2019 list. And then we will also be having a decade series coming out where me and the rest of the Movie Crusaders, we're going to go through the years and give our top 5 favorites for each year, all the way up to 2019, where we'll have a big kind of top 10 for everybody for 2019. So be on the lookout for that, and as well as any other movie reviews that will be popping up that I'll catch. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and until next time, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.